Cheers and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, where it's always fun to eat, drink, and be merry. We are the podcast where the wine is fine, the information is solid, and the conversation is easy. I'm Mary Babbitt.
I'm Mary Orland, and today our show is focusing on the sommelier community and the profession. And it's all about saving our somms. During the time of COVID, we've been hearing all about restaurant closures, winery, tasting room closures, and there's been a lot of emphasis and stories about supporting those folks, but we haven't heard a lot about supporting the sommelier community. And so today our show is all about Save Our Sommeliers, and we are so glad that we've got 4 terrific guests to help us out on this.
That's right. We want to thank you all for being here and also let our listeners know that we are recording today using Zoom. So we want you to bear with us because sometimes the audio quality can be a little spotty. But it does allow us to get sick people in the room, so to speak, even during a pandemic, and talk about what's been happening with sommeliers. So joining us today is Chris Blanchard, who co-founded the United Sommelier Foundation, and he is also a master sommelier working with Vine Hill Ranch. Also with us today is Tanya Pitts, sommelier and wine director at One Market Restaurant in San Francisco, Jennifer Locke from Crimson Wine and also a founder of Support Our Sommeliers, and Adam Sweeters, corporate wine director of Dynamic Hospitality in Chicago. Thank you all for joining us today, and we're grateful that you took time out for us during what has to be one of the most challenging times in your careers.
So we'd love to go around the table and have each one of you tell us briefly who you are, what you do, and kind of life before COVID and what it's like now for you and your career. And Adam, let's start with you.
Hi, yeah. So my name is Adam Sweeters. I'm the wine director for Dynamic Hospitality here in Chicago. I'm also the creator of the late wine event called Somm Madness, which has actually been rebranded to Wine Rival, thanks to the NCAA his cease and desist that I got during COVID.
Wow.
So a little more stress on the action, but a summary of life during COVID. My day-to-day normally is overseeing our 7 properties here in Chicago. We have a steakhouse, 2 Italian restaurants, a Mexican restaurant, a gastropub, and a nightclub. So previously I had a team of sommeliers that I would oversee, kind of direct the lists, direct training, etc., do the the purchasing, be responsible for all the back end and work. And after COVID, I basically became a high-paid delivery boy and would run out a bunch of orders to very hungry patrons that were no longer allowed in our restaurants. I spent a lot of time stuffing cookies in bags, handwriting thank you notes to all the people who continue to support us. It's almost undescribable what restaurants are going through right now. I'm lucky enough to be in a group where we have, 7 very strong restaurants in the city, and we're a little more equipped to weather this kind of storm than a lot of restaurants. And a lot of the mom and pops and the sommeliers in those communities, unfortunately, probably aren't coming back to a job. So, I consider myself wildly lucky to be in this position. But, the last 3 months, we just kind of started getting out of it a little bit last week. But the last 3 months, I guess everything I loved about doing what I do was just put on the shelf, and we're all just fighting to survive right now. So very interesting times.
Very challenging and
really tough. Tanya, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're in San Francisco?
I'm in San Francisco, and I'm the sommelier and wine director at One Market Restaurant, formerly Lark Creek Restaurant Group. And I have been in my position for 13 years now, and my restaurant has been open for 27 years, and we are a pillar in the community, in the financial district. my day to day, I would, come in, walk the floor, speak to guests, say hello, check in to make sure things have been stocked the night before in the cellar, check to make sure my orders had arrived, check in with private dining because we have a large private dining program, and make sure that those orders were correct and set and ready to go, and answer emails for wines for private events, for the regular restaurant, set up tastings, set up tasting notes for staff because I do staff training every day with wine. I also mentor my staff and kitchen staff that is interested in wine as well. And so life's pretty different for me now, as well as being on the floor 6 nights a week, which is by choice.
Yeah.
Even after being in the industry as long as I have, 3 decades is a long time. But because we are such a large restaurant, whereas most restaurants pivoted very quickly, we kind of sat back and watched the landscape. We had a labor force of about 100 people, which we immediately laid and furloughed those people off because we didn't know what was going to happen. And the majority of those people are still furloughed and laid off, and just keeping the key players in the restaurant, chef, general manager, partner, and private events. And if people have questions about the day-to-day and what needs to happen, they can, call on me because they've now opened up very recently curbside pickup for wine, cheese, champagne, and caviar. And last weekend, we started offering prime rib and salmon dinners complete with cocktails. But so for me, I'm just kind of on the sidelines, and having worked as long as I have and just on the hustle for a long time, I've just kind of taken this time to sit back, reflect, do lots of virtual tastings, studying, and a lot of self-care, and just figuring out what else is there now because of COVID, and things are going to look different for us in our community.
For sure. And Chris, tell us what's going on with you.
Yeah, a lot of self-care here, and that means cocktails, wine, margaritas. Yeah, trying to manage kids. I mean, that's been the biggest thing, is trying to, keep working and manage the, homeschooling, and now summer. Geez, I mean, it's pretty nuts. But I really miss the old days. I mean, right up until the 16th, I was supposed to do an event down in LA at Spago, and that got canceled, and then just like everything started shutting pretty much that day, which was Monday, right? And it's just been insane. And then I got furloughed for a while, and then got back on with the PPP. Thank God. Had to go on unemployment, which was really unbelievably a pain in the butt, to try and get that together, but helpful. And then, where do I start about how things have changed? What I do, my job, now is with Vine Hill Ranch, VHR, the wine from Oakville, Napa Valley. And so I'm the national sales director. So, I've been trying to keep, it's a weird thing. Like, what do you do? Restaurants are starting to open. Hey, do you want to buy a 3-pack? It's like, there's none of that going on. You know what I mean? It's a whole different world. And the United Sommelier Foundation that, I founded with Christy Norman has been keeping me busy as treasurer, writing checks. I wrote 25 this morning, take them down to the bank. It's like, so that's keeping me busy, and trying to help out the Napa restaurant community with, sidewalk dining and shutting streets. And it's just nuts. I mean, it's there's so much going on right now. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and we got to take it point by point, really, to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Doing okay.
And Jennifer, you being with a large wine group, I think you probably have a different perspective, but how have things changed for you and the sommeliers working with Crimson Wine?
Well, I mean, we're a group of wineries. I'd say we're kind of a small to medium wine company, actually, compared to some of the larger players. And we're a group of wineries that sort of represent unique places and varietals and sort of varietally true wines. And because of that, thankfully, a lot of our wines and our relationships were with the restaurant community. I mean, we sold some of our wines in particular were only sold in restaurants. And so I guess I'm also a new CEO. So I took over the role at Crimson the first week in December. So it's kind of been an interesting ride to come in and,
Sure.
and quickly pivot. I guess I sort of look at it as a very large macro and micro problem. I grew up in the restaurant business. I started bussing tables when I was 16 years old at a restaurant in Seattle called Ray's Boathouse, which is sort of an institution up there, and I worked there for 10 years. And my grandmother had a catering business. I have 3 stepsons, 2 of whom are in the restaurant and hospitality industry. And I think actually, as much as it is about the impact of the somms, it's actually the impact in our communities and the impact that this role, that the potential risk and danger of restaurants of not coming back has actually on the socioeconomic impact of our neighborhoods and our communities, because so many people have found their footing and found their life's work and their passion through perhaps, certainly when I was growing up, a more non-traditional path. I mean, all my friends went to be lawyers and doctors and things of that nature. And I was sort of the black sheep because I, wanted to go run restaurants and open restaurants and fell in love with wine. So I think, when all of this happened and we started to understand the impact of the restaurants, my initial response was just sheer sadness and just, I think unless you've been in the industry to really understand the amazing nature of the collaboration and the friendships and the commitment that this industry has, and we came up with this program called Support Our Somms, because truly what the restaurant community gives back, I think in many ways people probably have no idea of actually of the cultural and sort of the underlying influence that restaurants have in the places certainly that we live and work, and Napa Valley obviously being probably one of the greatest examples of that, of certainly as a destination, not only for winery, but for culinary. So for our company, it's been a time of constriction and self-reflection and reevaluating and focus. I would say that all businesses in this industry, whether you're on the production side in wine or in retail or in restaurants, is around focus. So I'm sure for Adam and Tanya, the amount of wines that you continue to carry and the amount of wine that you're going to sell and like reevaluating your programs is also a huge bit of this, as much as it is trying to figure out, when and hopefully if everyone returns back to work. So we've been trying to collaborate and to the best of our ability, work with somms and keep our teams on. Similar to Chris's company, we were fortunate to receive one of the loans. And so we've been able to keep our teams whole. Up until now, that loan is expiring, and now we're going to have to make some tough choices, because like restaurants, our direct-to-consumer business and tasting rooms and places like that have been massively impacted. And so, this is a far-reaching situation. So trying to give back where we can and remain resilient, and using this crisis, quite honestly, to drive harder on some initiatives that we needed to anyway, some of the incoming trends that we've seen, and not waste this time to be complacent, but actually take this time to try to make impact and be more relevant for the future.
Talk about that in a little bit, but I did want to ask both Jennifer and you, Chris, about the foundation work you're doing, because there's been a real effort within the restaurant community and beyond in the wine world to help support and save our sommeliers, and that means donations. So people have been giving money to help sommeliers who have been out of work for the duration of COVID-19. Can you guys tell us about that effort? Chris, should we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, it's It's been really quite amazing. So as I was saying before, on that day, I had to stay home from LA, and we went out with my family to eat at a local restaurant. And my friend said he was getting laid off tomorrow. I wasn't sure what he was going to do. And that night I got a text from a friend in Vegas who, with his 2 kids, he's a single dad, was like really freaking out about what to do. And, I went outside after everybody was asleep, and I was thinking, we got to do something. And I texted Christy Norman down at Spago. She works as a sommelier there at Spago Restaurant, Beverly Hills. And I said, man, what can we do? We got to do something because this is going to be bad, and people are freaking out. And she said, I should start a GoFundMe page. And man, I didn't have any idea how to do that, especially not like at 1 a.m. But anyway, I figured out how to do it. It was called like Emergency Sommelier Fund. That opened on St. Patrick's Day, basically. And people started giving money to it. And we were hoping to get, $10,000 or so, and then the donations kept coming in. And we started to get applications for people that were needing some money. And Christy got on the phone and got a bunch of people together. We have 7 board members, including a couple of master sommeliers and a master of wine. And we all just started like reaching out for companies as much as we could to raise some funds that we could then send out. And we decided to take these applications because we didn't want to know who anybody was, as board members to vote on. So everything comes in completely blind. We don't know who the people are. We don't know where they work. We don't know what city they live in. All we know is their history, like how long they've worked as a sommelier, and their background in hospitality, and basically a personal essay or a story about how they're doing and if they're getting unemployment and what they need. Like they need some money for rent, or they need money for groceries, or pay like an electricity bill or gas or whatever. Just normal stuff. And and then we started sending money out. And today, I'm the treasurer. So basically, every day, if I get a check in, I go to the bank with my mask, deposit it. The money comes here to my address, and I put it in the bank, and then I start sending out checks, like all day long, to people around the country, all over the United States. And we've raised. I was looking at as I say, I'm the treasurer. I was looking at the money, and we're you're not going to believe it, like $850,000 in funds from major corporations, distributors, small little wineries, regular people, just send in, $10 or $25. And, that money's still rolling in. But of that, I've sent out $250,000 and $500 checks to sommeliers who just need the money, and we're still continuing. We just approved, went through another 150 recipients applications, so I'm sending those out currently, and it's just been so amazing to see all these companies get together and support the people that have supported them all this time, working sommeliers who get beat up all day by suppliers and sometimes customers and chefs and general managers, going to work early, come home late, and then it turns out they're the first people that get axed, that get cut from the job, and then of course the last ones to be hired back, because what else are they going to do? Like you were saying, I mean, basically fill bags, do takeout orders, that sort of thing. And these are, some people at the beginning of when we started this were saying, oh, sommeliers, the elitist people, and all these sorts of things. And it's not. It's just like working restaurant people, and they're there to create a service experience, a dining experience, to make your dinner better. You know what I mean? And it's not a bunch of snotty kids who are trying to force orange wines on you or anything. And so what if there are some of those people? It's just regular people that need help in in basic necessities of life. And there's been no organization ever for sommeliers. I mean, there's obviously educational organizations, but nobody's there as a sort of bartenders guild or a restaurant workers guild, just to help out people that don't really have a voice currently. So that's where we are today.
Great. And I know, Jennifer, what are you guys doing? So Chris has got the United Sommelier Foundation, but yours is Support Our Sommeliers. And so tell me about the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah. So similar, I think, to Chris's, when this transpired, we were trying to think of creative ways to not only help, but engage the sommelier community. And as I mentioned, a lot of our wines are, exclusively sold or primarily sold in the on-premise. So we launched a pretty, honestly, it's pretty, guerrilla marketing idea where a lot of wine companies, we pay influencers, or people pay social media influencers to create content. And I went to the marketing department and I said, I don't want to pay anybody for marketing content unless they're an unemployed sommelier. And so the concept was as simple as that, which was to kind of put the somms to, help them obviously financially, but put them to work doing the thing that they love to do, and talking about their passion. And albeit it's not on the dining room floor, maybe it's in their kitchen or in their patio or at the grill. But this idea of asking somms to come participate and create content and telling stories about our wines. Because we were also, pretty significantly impacted, as direct to consumer is a big portion of our business. So it seemed to me like a win-win opportunity. So the general gist of it is that the somms create videos for us, or vignettes, and we pay them like we would normal influencers. And then for any, they get a promo code. And so for any residual sales, they basically get commission. And again, we stood it up pretty quickly. It's been pretty great to see. We've actually now launched in Canada. So we do have some sommeliers up in Canada starting to create content for us as well. I honestly, with everything going on, I was hoping to even bring in some other wineries, and I think it's something that we'll continue to do. And we've learned a lot in engaging with the somms, and Adam's done some work for us, and we've had some pretty creative and amazing content come our way. So I think we're going to continue to ask somms, even when the restaurants reopen, to partner with us and kind of bring, again, that in dining experience to alive on camera. One thing about somms, and I was one myself, so I can say this, is most of us like to talk, and we like to talk about wine. And so asking them to do that on videos not been been too hard of a request.
I love it. Great.
So you've all talked about pivoting and different things that you are doing that you weren't doing before. So I'd like to talk about, what that pivots, what you all can do to make yourselves more valuable in the profession. And like Adam, you were saying you were bagging food to go and all that. It's not something you probably trained for or ever anticipated doing, being a sommelier. So what are you doing to stay, make yourself valuable?
Yeah, I mean, bagging food is shockingly difficult, actually. But no, my job title for the time being has changed drastically. So I've been in the restaurant industry this is my 20th year. And the entire time I have been lucky enough to avoid operations. So I've never had to manage a floor. I've never had to open a restaurant. I've never had to close a restaurant. And tonight will be my third close in a row at my steakhouse. So kind of transitioning for the time being away from my role to, be an operations manager, just because it's needed. We don't have the funds right now to bring back on our full manager staff. I mean, if you just kind of do the math, we're allowed to bring in 25-ish% of our customers back. Well, that's probably going to relate to 25% of the revenue, which is probably going to relate to 25% of the staff you can bring back. Hopefully your landlords are being, kind to you and, giving you some leeway on your rent and your other bills. But yeah, the whole all hands on deck thing. This is it. I'm making drinks behind the bar. I'm bussing tables, which I've did before, but honestly, the closing of the restaurant and opening the restaurant thing, it was very stressed. I'm like, no. Like, as the sommelier in the company, they all look at you like you're the smartest guy, which I'm far from. I just know a lot of words that they don't know, so I seem smart. Now my true colors have come out, because it's like, wait, tell me all the doors I have to lock again. So, and they're like, is this guy who we thought he was? But no, it's all in good heart. I work for a great company. But that's just one of the many things, I'm picking up the phone, still doing to-go orders. To-go is still a very large platform of what we're doing right now. But, all joke, actually more of a joke. It's, I'm afraid I'm going to get really good at this. And then my employer is going to be like, hey,
Right.
you can do all this other stuff now. But, in a time of need, we're all just doing what we can do. We have a, full capacity here at the steakhouse at Prime and Provisions. We can seat about 550, and we're operating with 2.5 managers right now. So it's a very large operation. Obviously, we have limited seating, but that's a very large space to, split up 14 shifts between 2.5 people. So
Yeah. Wow.
This time is so difficult for everyone, and clearly for you guys especially, but I wonder if you've tried at all to peek into the future. So as things are starting to reopen around the country, what does the restaurant world look like for you? Adam was just saying that he's wearing a lot of different hats lately, and I'm wondering how you see yourselves progressing as we get into the summer and then the fall. Do you see yourselves getting back on the floor, talking to people about wine and helping them with their wine purchases? Do you see yourselves going back to a sommelier normal?
Well, my restaurant has 448 seats, and we also have 3 private dining spaces on top of that. So we're probably looking at a whole nother 200 seats. And so it means redistributing those spaces to be able to social distance diners, which we actually had done in the very beginning to begin with. So there's been lots of construction to have plastic partitions in between people. There's banquettes and booths also in the restaurant so that people feel safe. Also putting in a whole new point of sale system, something that's touchless. And it's going to be different. We talked about outdoor seating, which is happening. Bought the furniture and all the dividers for that. And so it's going to be different. And of course, it's not going to be full steam ahead. So that means people are going to have to be brought back in increments. For private dining, I'm starting to get inquiries for private dining for October. And most of those are actually trade events, believe it or not, is what those are. So I think we're not going to see that really kind of uptick until probably latter part of 2020, beginning 2021 is probably what we're going to see with that. And our rules as sommeliers, some people will leave the floor. And I mean, we've kind of already seen that happening, taking on other roles as operational people, general managers, going to work for distributors and suppliers, and then shifting gears and going to work for wineries as well, and being sommeliers at wineries. And it was interesting to me that we were starting to see that happen much more quickly, especially with the younger somms that had not been on the floor as long, just wanting to make that transition and having a different quality of life.
Interesting. And in terms of how sommeliers interact with customers, with guests, do you anticipate spending less time at a table? Because, especially at the fine dining establishments, that's one thing you really talk to the guests about, the wine and food pairings and any questions. And then what about the wine list? How are you going to handle that? And service even. Is table service going to be the same? Or are you going to pre-pour, take it to the table? How's that going to work? Have you guys thought about that?
Things will have to be pre-poured. Which wines by the glass were pre-poured to begin with. And I'm actually almost wondering if it would be much more sanitary for by the glass to present the glass and pour tableside. But you're going to be wearing a mask and gloves. And there's just something that's really very off-putting about that, especially in a fine dining setting and being able to have a conversation with people. But I think also because everyone's famished to have that experience and that closeness that they're used to having, that they are able to have when they come into a restaurant, coming into their favorite place. You sit down, your bartender knows what you're drinking, just about everyone on staff, and everything's just done for you. It feels like home. And so there'll be a certain amount of that, but we are going to have to keep some distance and keep some space and be smart about everything and wash your hands and keep everything clean.
Sure. A lot of cleaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I was going to say, sorry, this is Chris, and I was just going to say, Napa, we were one of the first counties to open in California, which was sort of good and bad in a way. On Memorial Day weekend, and when we went out and the places were packed, with a lot of tourists, which was, kind of unusual, and not doing the distancing or masks as much as they should have, which was worrisome to me.
Right.
And we have seen some of the cases going up, but in restaurants like Ken Frank at La Toque, and Mustards and different people that I've talked to are saying that the guests are staying sort of longer, and they're spending more money, and they're having, a cocktail at the beginning. They're doing stuff like foie gras or something expensive, 3-course, 4-course, 5-course meal with after dinner drinks and a fancy bottle of wine. So at least it seems like people are out, and that's hopeful, for all of us, spending money so that, hopefully restaurants get back on their feet and people get rehired. But it's still, everything's still up in the air.
You were saying earlier that in Napa, Main Street was closing for restaurants, or closing to traffic so that restaurants could come on in and fill the space. And
we've been, there's been 4 of us that have this sort of committee where we're trying to push the Chamber of Commerce and the City of Napa and the City Council to allow for more sidewalk seating, which has been great, because the Alcohol Beverage Commission here has been just fantastic, and allowing alcohol to be served in the sidewalk areas and expansion. And we got them to reduce the fee to have an expedited application for sidewalk usage and extra usage in parking lots and that sort of thing, to put tables. And hopefully we're pretty close here, it looks like, to maybe having Main Street shut down for a test run of about a month, and then maybe sort of permanently from then on, so that the area restaurants near there can put tables out and benches and whatever, and get some of their seating back. We'll see.
We just started outdoor seating in San Francisco as well last week. And those that didn't have that before now are allowed to do that. And the city actually gave them permits for free to be able to do that. No one had to pay for that.
That's great. And
I like Mayor Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, said publicly during a speech that just do it. If you get into any trouble, we'll back you up.
It's the old ask for forgiveness, not permission.
There you go.
So true. Adam, what's going on in Chicago in terms of the dining outside?
Yeah, Chicago sounds pretty similar to California, San Francisco. We had we opened last weekend for the outdoor dining, and I think Chicago's just a little more casual. Most of the people we're seeing coming out they're just ready to come out. I'm again lucky enough to work for very successful restaurants, and all of our restaurants, last Friday and Saturday were on 1.5-hour waits just to get a table out. So the people are hungry. They want to come out. They want to spend money. They want to support us. The gratuities we're seeing on checks to the servers are insane.
Nice.
I mean,
That's awesome.
I think our company average last year was about 21% overall gratuity. It's got to be in the high 30s.
Wow.
So people know that we're hurting. They want to support. It's just really heartfelt to see it, and it's just really great that these people want to come out and hurt the people that have been hurting the most, which is us.
Sure.
Being part of this world, you all know this, but what about for our listeners? Can you describe why sommeliers are important and what you guys bring to the dining experience and to the wine, like help us, maybe Jennifer, you take this one. Why do we need sommeliers? What do they bring to all of us in terms of wine knowledge and help when we're looking for the right beverage?
Well, I was never officially titled a sommelier, but I certainly did my time writing lists and running beverage programs back in the day. But, I think as you look at it from a business perspective, it always sort of struck me as odd that the back of the house or the culinary programs certainly were always the reason that many restaurants became famous or became established. And it was always come for the food and hopefully you get a good glass of wine and if you know any better. And I think the sommelier movement and the food and wine movement collectively together has done more for our industry single-handedly as sort of what I would say is sort of the second renaissance. Like the fact now that we have experts on the floor that can demystify or break down wines and spend enough time and attention similarly as you would in the back of the house from a food perspective is actually bringing in a much more holistic and meaningful experience. And I think, people can get their hands around, I think, food because we've been talking about it longer. Wine, as Chris mentioned, like orange wine, or there's some of these trends that I think just can be intimidating. And wine historically has been perhaps perceived as not being inclusive or something easy to understand. And I think the somms and a majority of them that have done such a great job is kind of breaking that down and inviting people to explore and maybe try something that they wouldn't have tried otherwise, and really broadening and branching out their experiences. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I chose this profession because I remember that moment when I had a meal with wine and they were so much better together than sort of the sum of their parts. And I think, having that engagement and the table side, it elevates the experience to a whole new level and playing field that just going in and having a meal simply just doesn't offer.
Sure. Now, one thing, are there going to be jobs to go back to for many of your colleagues and friends in the industry? And also I'm wondering about education. I know that the quartermaster sommelier exams have been put on hold, probably WSET as well. I have certifications in both, but I've been trying to stay educated, doing Zooms, virtual tastings. I know, Tanya, you've mentioned that too, but yeah. I wonder, how is this going to impact people who want to become sommeliers, who want to make wine their profession?
Well, I think what we're finding now, especially within Black wine professionals or influencers that are interested in wine as well as other people, they are going to be looking to get certifications with WSET more so than not, because my thought is the majority of them are not wanting to really be on the floor, but they're wanting to pivot, educate, create other existences for themselves, be that taking people on, wine tours in the U.S., internationally, creating experiences in people's homes, in other venues. I mean, so far I've seen all sorts of things. I've seen people, have wine parties on yachts by themselves, and have it broadcast, all sorts of things. So people are really being inventive with themselves, and as I said, some sommeliers were moving off from the floor to begin with. Wine lists are going to get smaller, much more focused, much more concise. And as I see it, just means I need to taste more wine, and I will be tasting more wine, and the wine list will change more often because you have to keep it fresh and exciting for your guests that walk in the door.
One of you guys mentioned earlier that some of the changes that have been forced upon you guys, upon the industry, some redesign was needed. Can you elaborate about that? Like this pivot and this redirect of the industry, is any of this beneficial in any way? Or is it all just horrible news? Is there anything good here?
No, some of it's beneficial. So it depends on what side of the fence you're on that one. So if you're still around, it's probably going to be beneficial to you. If you're not, obviously it's not beneficial to you. Case in point, in my company, we had two separate people, one doing the wine programs and one doing the beverage programs. As of last Friday, I now do all of it. So it's like a lot more work. But again, in the coming months and the years, it'll essentially be beneficial to my own personal career. Obviously, for the counterpart, it's not beneficial at all. I think you're going to see these things moving forward. As I think Tanya was saying about wine lists getting smaller, staffs are going to get smaller, especially for the foreseeable future. Again, I think it's opportunity, especially coming out of this. I don't think it's all darkness. I think for the lucky few who do get through this, I think once this is done, times are going to be better than they ever have. It's a sad thought, but when people are allowed to go out to restaurants again, it's a hard fact, but there's going to be probably 20-30% less options to go to. So that means if you're still alive, if you're still surviving, you have that many more people trying to get into your venues. So if you're the lucky ones to kind of make it through the storm, I do think there are good times coming, and I do think things will get better. But we were saying this earlier about some of the employees coming back. I can't stress enough the more you have on your resume, the more you can do for a restaurant, the more valuable you become. So I think Chris and Tanya were talking about this earlier. It was already starting to happen where, somms were becoming somm managers. They were half a manager, half a somm. I think it's going to always be that way after this. I think the role of I'm just a somm, I'm just the wine buyer, I'm just doing wine stuff. I mean, less than 1% of the jobs from now on. You'll have your 3-star Michelin restaurants that are still doing that kind of stuff. But if you want to set yourself ahead, you better be able to do a lot. And that's kind of where I think people are going to be able to survive and ultimately benefit.
Yeah, it's going to be a long road back. But I agree entirely that the people that have the experience are going to become even more valuable. And a lot of the youngsters that are just getting into this, off the bat, have a couple of years in, want to take exams and be well known for, being whatever unusual or something, probably going to have to maybe find another career, because a lot of these sommeliers that want that aren't interested in the guest experience as much, that are more selfish. I think those are the ones that aren't going to be as valuable, and maybe it's not going to be as interesting anymore. There's just not going to be those jobs. And the other thing you mentioned, with the master sommeliers and all that stuff, there's still exams, but I'm sitting here doing text right and left because there's a lot of stuff going down, this very moment, and it's going to force the Court of Master Sommeliers to really re-examine, it's very hard to get through to them. And, we've had a resignation today over a lack of a statement about diversity in the organization, which is very super disturbing to me. And it's hard for me just to, have this conversation without saying that some of these older organizations really have to get their act together in order to make some changes. And these sommeliers aren't going to want to take the exam anymore. It's frankly somewhat embarrassing for me, to be a part of an organization that doesn't give any sort of statement. And there's obviously COVID and all this stuff is like the most devastating thing, but we're in the midst of an amazing new civil rights movement with people becoming aware of what's happening in this country. And it's devastating, but also very exciting. Whereas there's a lot of forcible accountability, which I think is good news, but it's just like there's just so much going on in the world today. It's just hard to respond.
Well, and Chris, that's one of the things I wanted to talk with you all about is given what's going on socially in this country over the past couple of weeks and the issue of diversity, in the wine world, in the sommelier profession. I mean, how do you think that needs to be addressed?
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Mentorship. We need mentorship, and I do mentoring. I know that there are others that mentor as well. But, what I've heard echoed recently is the fear of not having a mentor that is in your corner, that understands you, your background and where you come from and who you are as a person. And for me, a mentor is someone that is supportive, that believes in you. And if that person didn't believe in you, it wouldn't be your mentor to begin with. And that is mentoring.
Right. And, how do people go about creating relationships with a potential mentor? What tips or advice do you have?
If you have someone that you admire in the industry, approach them and ask them to mentor you. When people show me interest and say that they're interested in becoming a sommelier or getting on the floor and learning more about wine, I'm supportive of that. But they have to be serious about it and, not waste my time, because I'm busy.
Right.
But I'm all for, teaching people and bringing people in, because it's needed. That's what happened to me, many years ago. There were those that saw me, understood that I had a palate and said, hey, this is really what you should be doing. You should really be a sommelier, But it's difficult when you don't have role models or you don't have see people that look like you. So you don't really know that it's something that's even possible for you.
Right. We need to see more people of color in this profession.
Yeah. And we're here, but we're scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really excited about a platform that wine writer Julia Cooney is putting together, which is Black Wine Professionals. And, it's awesome and amazing to see everyone all, in one composite together. Those of us that didn't know that the other existed all over the world. It's just, it's really wonderful. And to be able to just contribute to that, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, Julia, she's an amazing, amazing person, and so much energy and such a force. So we'll have to get her on Sip Sips Hooray.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear, though, that there is a recognition long overdue that diversity inclusion has not been a part of the sommelier world and many, or the wine industry in general. So it's about time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Jennifer, just, how do you look at the whole issue with diversity, and what are you all trying to do to address it?
Well, I think spot on, right? Like I worked for a company once, and I remember we were in front of the investors and we were doing a fair amount of business in Asia. One of the investors said, it's interesting to me that your board of directors and your executive leadership team has one basically Asian member, and that's actually your target consumer for your biggest place of growth.
Wow.
So now coming in as a new CEO, I feel very much the same way. We need to diversify our voice, and that means that we need more people of color, of gender, of all sorts of levels of diversity, quite honestly, to survive. Because my personal story around this is that Tuesday morning, we had a big debate on Blackout Tuesday, what we were going to do. And I told the company, I said, we're going quiet. And we haven't earned the right to actually say anything because we haven't done the work. So I got on the phone with a gentleman that works for me actually in Portland, who runs, ironically, our digital media, who happens to be African American. And he's a young guy. And I called him and I said, I'm at a loss to know how to respond right now. I'm getting all this pressure to post, but I don't feel like it feels like I'm just taking, I mean, if we'd come out 3 weeks before or 2 weeks before and we had been an early adopter and really stuck our necks out to do something, I said, right now, what I want to do is just actually take the time to come up with a really meaningful response. And, you know, I am a middle-aged white woman, you know, and yeah, I wanted to do the right thing. So my question to him is like, how do I respond to make you proud to work for this organization? Mm-hmm. And we had a really great conversation about it. And it's not about posting on a Tuesday afternoon. Yeah. It's about advocacy. It isn't just about, I mean, I think mentoring is so important, but you need people like, in my role, people like Chris, people like Adam, people who have a seat at the table. Tanya certainly is a leader in the San Francisco community for how long your reputation precedes you and you have a voice. Like, we have to insist that our organizations do better. And that starts with something, and it's super easy. Like some of the things we're coming up with, you know what, when we have jobs, we're posting them in different places. We're not just going to winejobs.com anymore and just hoping that somehow diversity happens. And we're publicly traded. So we're actually coming up with a completely new ESG initiative and all of that. So unlike other privately held companies, we actually, will be publicly held accountable for putting our quote unquote money where our mouth is. But for me, first and foremost, it starts with diversity in our workforce. We have to do a better job of having a more diverse workforce. We've done a lot around gender, but racial diversity and, quite honestly, LGBTQ, another area for our organization that really needs to, we need to lean in harder on.
Yeah, terrific. It's not words. It's, this time is a time for reflection, just not on, because of COVID, but because of also all the social changes, and things are happening really quickly. So,
but COVID, I think someone asked the benefits. Like COVID, yes. I actually think the silver lining of COVID mm-hmm. is that it created space and a level of anxiety and all that. Like, I actually think that the Black Lives Matter movement and some of these things may not have had the level of intensity and sustained as long as it has if we had not been dealing with COVID on top of it.
Sure.
So if you do look for silver linings, I do think that for whatever reason, which is everyone was in such a different frame of mind, like things have to change. Frustrated, and then you overlay this on top of it, and it's like this voice of social injustice, which has been with us forever. It's not a problem that happened overnight, and don't suspect we're going to fix it overnight.
It just all came bubbling to the surface. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people's minds are being opened, eyes are being opened, and minds are being opened as well. And so I want to be respectful of your time. I know all of you guys are busy and have a lot on your plate. Chris, as you said, is answering texts as we talk. But I want to thank you. I think this is a very hopeful place to end anyway, because I think we're talking about the positive changes that will be coming our way. So,
and before we go, I would just like to have you all just tell our listeners how they can help. How can they donate to the United Sommelier Foundations or support our sommeliers, and how can they help folks like you, Adam, and you, Tanya?
Yeah, it's easy for us because we have a pretty good website. It's United Sommeliers, which is plural, Foundation, UnitedSommeliersFoundation.org. And then you can go on there and if you are, and it's very important, if you're somebody that needs some help, just scroll down to the bottom where it says, apply basically, and you can go right to the application. That goes right to us. And then if you'd like to donate, there's donate, and there's testimonials from some really good chefs and really good somms and people, but that's the easiest way for us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, mine's super easy too. So go to restaurants, drink wine, tip well. That's it.
Done.
I echo that. Eat, dine out, order out, buy wine. Support accounts that are doing good in your communities, and actually check to make sure. don't assume.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, how can our listeners find the videos that the sommeliers have been doing with your wineries?
So we do it by winery. So we have a portfolio of wines, but if you go to support our somms, 2Ms, that will pop up and it will show you the list of properties. But the easiest way to do that is by following us on social media platforms, either Facebook or LinkedIn.
And what are those handles?
Pine Ridge Vineyards, Archery Summit Winery are the two main wineries, and Sagacio Family Winery.
Well, thank you again for being here, all of you. Adam Sweeter, Tanya Pitts, Jennifer Locke, and Chris Blanchard. We wish you good health, renewed success, and easier days ahead. And we are grateful for the time you spent with us. So cheers to all of you, and sip, sip, hooray.
Like that.
Yes,
Nice.
yes. And for our listeners, thank you so much for joining us as well. And to follow us, we are at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. So please tag us with any of your social media posts. And to find out more about our podcast and some of the other episodes that we've done surrounding what's going on with COVID-19 and the wine industry, our website is sipsiphooraypodcast.com. And I also want to thank all four of you for joining us today. Really great discussion. And, we look forward to getting back and visiting and dining out and drinking more wine.
Cheers. Sounds
All right,
good.
you guys. Cheers. Sip, sip, hooray.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for our show today. Thanks for coming along for the ride.
Absolutely. If you really like what we're doing, please share it with your friends and family. And to be sure that you don't miss another one of our super fun episodes, go to our website, sipsiphooraypodcast.com, and subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll automatically know when we drop an episode.
Absolutely. Get on board. Follow us on the Gram and Facebook, and be sure to tag us at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast. And that way we can stay in touch with you. Thanks for coming along, and we'll see you again next time. Sip Sip Hooray.
Worried about keeping up with your fave friends all summer? Or posting every perfectly pink sunset you see? Don't sweat the Connect. You can have it made in the shade with 4 lines of unlimited data for $100 a month. Scroll the staycation pics, find your new go-to takeout spot, or catch some rays on video chat. Whatever you and the crew are into, all the data makes it all that much better. Smile. You're on Cricket.
Cricket Core acquired on 4 lines. Data speed limited to 3 megabits per second. Cricket may slow data speeds when the network is busy. Additional fees, usage, and restrictions apply.
Hey, this is Jill from the Container Store.
Oh.
Is there something wrong?
I just thought a virtual designer would be a cool robot.
I could do a robot voice if that helps.
Maybe?
Hi, I am Jill. Let's design.
Nope, absolutely not. Regular voice, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not good at impressions.
Enjoy free virtual in-home closet design and up to 25% off closet systems with the Container Store's custom closet sale. The Container Store, where space comes from.